Hello, I'm Saad Dino, a pharmacist and owner of Acton Pharmacy. I would like to welcome you to the first edition of our show, A Healthier You. Our goal is to discuss relevant health topics and provide information that will help you live a healthier lifestyle. Each month, we will have a new show dedicated to a specific health issue. Today's topic is breastfeeding, and our guest is lactation consultant Michelle Stolo. Michelle has been a lactation consultant for the past 10 years and really a trusted advisor to many women in this area. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Michelle.
Thank you.
If you could please begin by just telling us a little about your experience and how long you've been doing this and so on and so forth, please.
All right. Well, I've been a lactation consultant for 10 years now. I have a private practice and I'm based out of Maynard. I do home visits and help mothers with breastfeeding issues in their homes. And I started out, I have a master's degree in child development from Tufts. Excellent. And then I had my own kids, so I have practical experience breastfeeding my 3 kids.
Okay.
And I was a volunteer breastfeeding counselor for 15 years also, so that was my getting ready to become a lactation consultant, and then now I've been helping breastfeeding mothers in our area for about 10 years.
So how do you help new moms in the breastfeeding arena? What ways and what teaching methods, so on and so forth, that you use for new moms?
Well, I try to help new moms meet their breastfeeding goals, which are very individual for each new mother. So I do home visits and I help them get breastfeeding off to a good start and help them with any challenges they might be having.
Okay. So what are some of the ways that, obviously it's a lifestyle change. So what are some of the ways that you kind of walk a woman through, a brand new mom, through the breastfeeding, bringing it up to par, and a lot of the questions and that they may have, and sessions that you utilize, or anything that you may use to assist them in this new endeavor, if I may call it.
Well, I think that most new moms have a learning period where they are getting used to breastfeeding and learning how to breastfeed. They're learning a totally new skill, and they're learning it with a baby who hasn't done it yet before. And I think that most moms have a learning time of a couple weeks where they're getting things going well. And so they need to really take some time during that time. And I usually advise new moms to really try to give themselves that time to get breastfeeding off to a good start and spend lots of time just quietly with their baby and learning those new skills. And if they're having any challenges, to reach out for help, because there's lots of help out there from volunteer breastfeeding counselors and lactation consultants and other kinds of support that's out in the community so that they can get breastfeeding off to a good start.
So it's a lifestyle change for a mom, correct?
Yes.
So are there any suggestions you may have for a mom that's looking into breastfeeding right now, who's pregnant and about to have a child? What methods or what lessons can a mom learn now? Because I know from my wife's experience, for example, she waited a little too long, in asking the pediatrician about classes and or sessions that are available to her. Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions in that regards?
Well, certainly taking a breastfeeding class is a great way to get off to a good start, and reading about it, learning about it, talking to friends and family members who may have breastfed. But there's so much information out there, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So some good choices to start with is there's a great new book that's been published by La Leche League, which is a breastfeeding support organization, called The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. There have been editions of that book going back to the 1950s, but the latest edition has a tremendous amount of information that's a really helpful place to start for new moms. And also, a pregnant mother can start attending a support group meeting and learn from the moms who are currently breastfeeding some things about what to expect and some ways to overcome some of the early challenges she might run into.
May I ask you to repeat the name of the book one more time, please?
It's called The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding.
Thank you very much. Obviously, breastfeeding has been demonstrated to be to have great benefits. Can you discuss and be a little more specific as to what the benefits are of breastfeeding?
Well, breastfeeding is the natural way for people to feed babies, and it confers lifelong benefits for the baby who's being breastfed. It's a great protection against many illnesses that the baby might come in contact with. And it's an active protection because babies are born with an immature immune system, and mothers have a mature immune system. So when a baby is exposed to an illness, it brings those germs back to the mother, and the mother's immune system starts making antibodies specific to that illness that the baby's been exposed to, and then those antibodies go through the milk to the baby and help protect the baby from the illness that it's been exposed to.
And are there studies or documentations to prove of such what you just stated?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Plenty of evidence that breastfeeding is the best way to feed a baby.
Any myths that you might have heard about breastfeeding out there that a mom might want to know about?
Oh, there are plenty of myths out there.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons to take a class and do some reading and do some learning and get ready for having a good start to breastfeeding.
I've heard from, I'm sure you have as well, from a woman that you advise that there's a bonding that occurs between a mom and a newborn when it comes to breastfeeding. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Absolutely. Breastfeeding is more than just feeding your baby. Breastfeeding is definitely a wonderful way to get off to a good start with parenting your baby, because it creates a very unique bond between the mother and the baby. And one of the ways I advise women to get started with breastfeeding is by holding the baby skin to skin on their chest.
Okay.
Right from birth, that can be a wonderful way to get started with breastfeeding and to help the baby feel very safe and comfortable out in the new environment that they've been
Sure.
born into. And that continues on after the birth and for the next many weeks of learning how to breastfeed. Just relaxing with her baby skin to skin on her chest is a great way to have everything get off to a good start. Skin to skin time for the baby helps the baby regulate all of their body systems, their breathing, their heart rate, their temperature, helps them grow better, and it helps the mother's milk supply. She actually produces more milk from holding her baby skin to skin. Okay. And sometimes when I recommend that moms hold their baby skin to skin, they think that they're going to be sitting around with their shirt off, and that doesn't sound good. It sounds cold and it sounds very exposed.
Especially weather like today.
So I recommend that women put the baby skin to skin and then put a big shirt around both of them or a robe or something so the baby can be tucked in and warm. The mom's wearing something so she feels comfortable and she can spend lots of time like that. And also the other parent, the baby's father or other parent or partner can also hold the baby skin to skin, and it's really good for bonding for them as well.
So speaking of fathers, what recommendations do you have for new fathers specifically, if their partners are going to choose the breastfeeding path? How could they help the new moms?
It's so important for the father to be supportive of breastfeeding too, or for the other parent of the baby to be supportive of breastfeeding. And so I highly recommend that they attend the classes with the baby's mother and be a supportive partner and learn as much as they can also so that they can help. And also holding the baby while the mother is getting some sleep is another key important thing so that the mother can get some rest, because getting enough sleep is one of the biggest challenges for new mothers.
I see. I appreciate that answer. Now, of course, there's challenges to everything. What are some of the challenges that you discuss with new moms that are seeking this path? Can you give us some specific answers as to some of the challenges that you discuss in your classes with new moms that are, again, seeking this path?
Well, again, it's learning a new skill. So the new mother will need to take some time and maybe limit some of the visitors who are going to want to come in the first couple of weeks and really spend some time learning how to breastfeed her baby. And she'll want to think about a support system. So it's great if she can, before she has the baby, actually identify who the resources in her community might be for getting started with breastfeeding, helping her learn how to breastfeed, and being a support if she has any questions during that early learning time. And also finding some other ways to meet new moms who are also going through the same thing as her, because I think that it can be a very isolating experience for someone who's been working full-time to suddenly be home full-time with a baby. Sometimes it's very surprising how challenging that can be for new moms, especially after the initial rush of visitors and their partner goes back to work, and then suddenly they're home all day with somebody who can't talk. And that seems to be a very challenging situation for some women. And I think finding a support group of other moms with new babies is a great way to to find other new moms and find some peers and people who will be happy to talk about all the challenges that she's going through and talk about babies without getting tired of it. There's lots of support groups in our area. There are breastfeeding support groups through La Leche League and the Nursing Mothers Council, which are both active volunteer organizations in our area.
Sure.
And also Emerson Hospital and First Connections runs a new mom support group.
Okay.
And First Connections runs a number of different groups for parents and children.
Excellent, excellent. So how about a mom that plans tons the first, after she has a baby, she's planning her next 3-4 weeks. What do you have? What recommendations do you have?
Well, I recommend that moms try to take a break after they first have their baby and really try to not schedule anything for those first couple of weeks after they have the baby, so that they can learn how to breastfeed their baby and learn about their baby and really spend time getting to know their baby without a lot of distractions. That being said, everybody wants to come visit when you have a new baby. So you have to plan that some time in for visitors and try to take some time that's going to be just quiet time for the new family.
And because the baby needs his rest as well, or her rest, I should say.
Well, they tend to sleep no matter what.
Exactly. What about workplace? A mom that's been home from her maternity leave is over. She wants to get back to work. Any guidance you could provide to a new mom that wants to get back to work, had a brand new baby now, spent some time at home, ready to go back to work. There's the breastfeeding aspect to her lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. How does the workplace, is there challenges to that or no challenges to that? What have you heard from moms that you speak to?
Right. Well, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for new moms who are planning to go back to work is how are they going to combine breastfeeding and going back to work. Sure. It's certainly done successfully by many, many women who continue to breastfeed when they go back to work, and it's just a matter of figuring out what you need to do to get ready, and there's lots of help out there to help get ready. There are books and also having somebody to talk to about the specific issues about that mother's work situation and how to manage pumping while at work and providing milk for her baby, choosing a daycare that's going to be supportive of breastfeeding, finding a place at work to pump. And I think that women who have not had their babies yet can identify maybe some resources at their workplace before they go on their maternity leave that will help them when they come back to work, especially if there have been other women in their workplace who've already laid the path down. They can just follow along in what's been set up, and if not, they can be the one who sets the course for the next woman behind them who might be planning to breastfeed at that workplace.
Can you share some of the challenges that that there may exist at a workplace that a mom may need to have in her thinking before she approaches an employer, for example?
I think that every situation is unique, and so it's helpful to talk to somebody who can help them, help the new mom think through what her particular situation is and how to solve any obstacles that she might come up against. But usually it can be, a good solution can be found. All sorts of different creative solutions have been found for lots of different types of workplaces and different types of jobs where women are successfully able to combine working and breastfeeding. And one thing to remember is that a breastfed baby is going to have much less illnesses, and so the working mom is going to miss a lot less work. And that's usually an attractive reason for the employer to make breastfeeding work for the employee to come back.
Michelle, what are some of the challenges that a mom may have in regards specifically to breastfeeding in the first few days or maybe few months? If I could ask that question, please.
Well, there are a lot of challenges that come up for new moms, and I always encourage new moms to learn as much as they can beforehand, but then still things are going to come up as they learn how to breastfeed. So some of the common challenges that I help new moms with are soreness during breastfeeding, difficulty getting the baby positioned or latched on, and a lot of moms have some difficulty with that. Some moms experience engorgement in the early days of breastfeeding. These are all issues that we can address during a home visit and help the mom get through those issues. And sometimes the issues are more complex, sometimes they're pretty easy to get through, and then we go on from there.
Perfect.
And hopefully breastfeeding gets easier and easier, and she can
And by the second child, it's an easy thing to do.
Hopefully.
As a pharmacist, you know, we get questioned a lot in our store when my mom is breastfeeding. What medications can I take and what medications I cannot take, whether it's, you know, prescriptions or not, or over the counter. Any suggestions you have?
I think that's a challenge for a lot of breastfeeding mothers to get that information about, you know, knowing about what's safe to take, what's not safe to take. So I encourage all mothers to check with their pediatricians about any medications to make sure it's going to be safe for the baby during breastfeeding.
Sure.
But it's important for new moms to know that for almost every condition that they might need to take a medication for, there is something that's safe enough to take while they're breastfeeding. So they don't have to feel like they can't take any medication just because they're breastfeeding. It's just very important for them to find out which ones are okay to take while breastfeeding and which ones aren't.
Excellent. So, I mean, the resource that we always refer to is pediatrician and obstetrician. Mm-hmm. And I think those are very important, where, you know, a mom needs to check. Just even we as pharmacists, we may know it's safe. We always recommend that they should check because we don't know what other conditions are going on. So I appreciate you honing on to that point because it's very important. Another challenge that may occur is public breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so that could be a challenge, if we may use that word. How do you try to have a mom overcome that challenge, if I may ask that question, please?
I think in the first few weeks of breastfeeding, moms often wonder how they're ever going to leave the house with their baby, because breastfeeding is difficult. In the early days, they're helping the baby get latched on, and it's difficult to be discreet. But as women get more comfortable with breastfeeding, they're actually able to breastfeed very discreetly. And I find that usually around between 3 and 6 weeks, usually women start to feel much more comfortable with breastfeeding and start feeling like they can get out and about with their baby. And I encourage them to start practicing for breastfeeding out in public in a way that they feel comfortable with. And usually if they get started at home, practice in front of a mirror, practice with close friends or family members, and until they feel more comfortable with how they look while they're breastfeeding and knowing that they can breastfeed discreetly in public. Some women still will feel like they want to find a private place to breastfeed when they're out and about, and often that's not too difficult to find somewhere that's kind of tucked out of the way where they can breastfeed. But many women find that they can breastfeed comfortably anywhere they happen to be. Sure. And of course, they're allowed to breastfeed anywhere that they are allowed to be.
And it's interesting, like, you know, in malls and, big department stores, there are usually places for a mom to have her privacy if she needs to be.
Often there are places that are set up for women to have a private place to breastfeed, and often there are just places where a woman could find a spot.
Perfect. Are there any rules or regulations in Massachusetts that require an employer to provide a specific space, a specific area for breastfeeding moms?
There are rules about that, and so it is required that they, I don't actually know the exact regulations, yeah. But they do need to provide a time and space for women to pump while they're at work.
Okay, so the question is, how does she store that breast milk? Are there methods and areas that you recommend, or what's the best way to do that at work?
There are lots of different ways to approach that. But usually women either have a refrigerator that they have access to at work, or they bring a cooler with them to work so that they can store the milk for the baby to have the next day at daycare.
Excellent. I'm sure the moms that may be watching this need the resources. Any other further resources? You mentioned a couple. Can you be more specific in your answer as to enlist them specifically, any specific, I should say, resources that you have, whether websites or local? I know you alluded to some, but can we just repeat those, because I think those are very important for the viewers to have.
Okay, well, you mentioned websites, and there is a great website that we have in our area that's zipmilk.org, zipmilk.org, where you can put in your zip code and you get a list of local breastfeeding counselors, volunteer breastfeeding counselors, lactation consultants, support groups. So it's a great resource that allows women to find access to a lot of people who can help them out and groups that could help them out. And then, like I said, there are 2 volunteer support group organizations in our area, La Leche League and the Nursing Mothers Council, that provide phone counseling by trained leaders and support group meetings that are usually monthly. And then Emerson Hospital and First Connections run this New Moms group in our area that's a weekly group. And First Connections runs a number of different programs for new mothers and young children.
I see. And I'm sure these resources are available at pediatricians' offices and Emerson Hospital itself.
Yes.
In Concord, obviously. Michelle, thank you so much. I mean, I think you provided some great resources and expertise. Obviously, you've been doing this for a while, so we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today on our first show. We are having a free public event on breastfeeding in Acton Pharmacy on Wednesday, February 13th at 7 p.m. Again, it's Wednesday, February 13th at 7 p.m. This event will feature Michelle and cover the basics of breastfeeding. We invite all moms and dads to join us and think it's going to be a really great event. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking the time to be with us, and I look forward to our next show. Be well.